Right, I'm just going to see how to share my screen. Does everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, good. So what I'm showing here is it's not a sales pitch, it's to give an idea of um, how we're like presenting deals and how we get to these figures. And this is based on what we were just talking about during the training: buy, renovate, rent, and refinance.
Yeah.
Here we're talking about well, can you see my mouse as I'm moving it, by the way?
Yes, I can. Yeah.
Okay, great. So what we're seeing here, it's what we call a mid-terraced house. This one is in South Wales, where this red dot is. It's in a medium-sized, like industrial town in South Wales. So this currently, it's a three-bedroom mid-terraced property. And as we spoke about on buy, renovate, rent, and refinance, the aim is always to buy below market value, to be able to do a renovation and to find a way of adding more value so we can end up with an end value that is more than the cost of the purchase and the renovation. So here we've got both things. So it's saying available to purchase at 105,000, which we're saying, and I'm going to explain how can we see if this is true or not, because people, when they're presenting deals, they can say all sorts of things. We need to look at the details and understand if that's the case. So here, like we're stating, it's 12.5% below market value. We need to understand, is it really? We've got a renovation cost and a estimated end value. So clearly what it's saying here is we're buying at this amount, adding around 10,000. It's saying basically we're adding like 20,000 extra value from this deal, and we need to understand if that can be the case. And what it's saying here, the plan is to create a fourth bedroom within the space of the lounge on the ground floor, and that's going to add value to it. And the other thing about this deal is that rather than rent it out as a standard family home to a family at a standard rent, which in this area would more likely to be 850 pounds per month, because this house is close to a major hospital. The plan here on this deal would be, if the person that buys it, to rent it out by the room for short or medium term accommodation to medical staff. Because when we rent a house out by the room, obviously we're getting a lot more money in than if we're renting it out to a single family. When we're renting out by the room, we have to pay for the utilities and there's more higher management costs, but the income is going to be significantly higher. So we're saying here that the end value is going to be a 140,000. And we're talking about the net income of this amount if we're renting it out on a room by room basis. And we're talking, so here we've got the figures that are presented in the brochure. We've got purchase price. We always have to consider quite a lot of things that not all, for example, deal sources are going to talk about, but we need to make sure we're considering all of these things. Like if we're buying something, we've got the stamp duty, we've got a sourcing fee if we're buying through a sourcer, we've got conveyancing, we've got renovation and conversion costs. So in this example, this is the total amount of money that we're putting into the deal, so 125,000, and we've got an end value of 140. So we're generating in here £15,000. And then we're looking at how, so we need to put into this deal 125,000. So how can we go about doing that? Here we've got the example self-fund and refinance after renovation. So we happen to have in our back pocket £125,000. We can go in and buy the property, we can renovate it, and when we finish that, then we can go to the bank and say, look, we've got a property now that's worth 140,000. We can get from the bank 75% of that. And so we'll get most of our money back. Not all of it, but we'll get most of our money back out. If we haven't got that 125,000 available, we can use bridging finance. So we can borrow typically from the bank 75%, 70% of our purchase price. We can borrow all the money for the renovation, which means that we need approximately in this deal something like 40,000 to be able to get into this deal. And when we've finished, we can still refinance. We won't get our 40,000 back out because when we're doing finance at the beginning and also at the end, we've got additional finance costs. So maybe we'll get like 25,000 back out, and we'll see how we calculate that in a moment. But it's still a good deal. We've still got quite a bit of our money back, and it won't be too long with maybe if we've got work income, maybe a bit more savings, and the rental income from the property. In a few months' time, we'll be ready to be able to go on to the next one and build up the portfolio. So this is how a deal is presented. What we're going to look at now is how we can check those figures and how we can get to those figures.
Yeah, I got a quick question here. Is
Yeah,
that okay if I ask a question, Trevor?
yeah, fine. Yeah, ask questions. That's what it's
Yes,
for.
sir. First of all, I see the GDV. So what does the GDV means?
A
BD.
GDV means gross development value.
Okay. Okay.
Typically, we talk about gross development value when we're doing some like major works on something. Like for example, yeah, like I don't know if we're buying a property and we're going to be demolishing it and rebuilding, making like 8 flats. We'll say if the value of the building at the end is going to be like 5 million, we'll
Okay.
say the GDV is 5 million. That's basically the value at which we can sell
Okay. Okay. Okay.
when we put our money in, when we've done our
Yeah.
renovation or our building work. When we've got our end value, we can do two things. Either we can sell and take our profit,
Yeah.
and then obviously when we sell and take our profit, we haven't got any ongoing income, but we've made our profit and we're going to go on the next thing. The other thing that we can do is we can go to the bank and refinance. So we take money out based on the end value. Advantage of that is then we've got our ongoing rental income from that deal,
Yeah.
but we haven't got
Yes.
all the money out because we left some of the money in the deal, which we're calling equity, which is the money that's left in there.
Yes. Yes. And you highlighted the 105 and 9,500. So, because 105 is the we would be purchasing at, and then I'm just trying to understand. You mentioned something about why did you highlight this?
In
So,
reality, the reason I highlight that, and we'll see in a moment, because this actually is a copy from my Excel file. The
okay.
highlighted things are the numbers that I put in there, and everything else is calculated automatically.
Okay. Okay. So these, I mean, okay, fine, fine. Okay. As we go ahead, I think I would be more clearer.
Yeah. So what I'm actually going to do, I need to find the other thing that I want to share, which is, oops, yes. So what I have here, so this is digging a little deeper into how we analyze a deal. So, and here you see basically the same thing. You see that darker green, that 105,000. So what we see here is, so we're putting the property address in, what type it is, surface area. And this is important, is that we've got because we know the surface area, we can calculate a price per square meter based on the purchase price, which here is 1,346. We can have a price per square meter based on the end value. And there are online tools that enable us to understand what are the average property prices per square meter in a given area. And we can immediately compare to see if that makes sense as end value. So here, the agreed purchase price is this much. So in the calculator, it's going to automatically calculate the stamp duty based on the percentages. In this case, this is the property in Wales and the stamp duty of 4% on it. We've got a sourcing fee because if this is a deal, then someone's found it and there's the charge for that. Then we've got these two lines are blank because we don't always have to do a survey if we're buying cash. And if we're not buying an auction, there's no auction fees. This is a straightforward purchase via an agent at a negotiated price. And then we've got the cost of the renovation or the conversion, which is, in this case, it's 9,500. We've had someone in to estimate that and give us a quote for that work. So that's how we calculate automatically the total amount of money that needs to go in. We've also got here, and often people aren't thinking about that, we've got the holding costs during renovation. Because if we buy a house, we've still got council tax on it, we've got to pay insurance, we've got to pay some utility bills. And until we've done the renovation, we have to pay for that. And in this case, if we go down a bit, you will see that we've estimated holding costs per month of £250, and we've got 3 months in which to complete the renovation. So the person that buys it needs to take into account this amount of money. So if we were buying it cash, that's the amount of money that we need, and we're expecting to get this end value. If now we're going to refinance the property to get our money out, we want to understand how much money are we going to be getting out and how much is going to be left in. So if we get an end value of 140,000, we can borrow 75% of that, but we have to pay to the lender. There's always going to be a 2% what's called an arrangement fee. We have to pay the lender's legal fees for doing the loan. We have to pay our legal fees. So at the end, from that amount of lending, we're actually only going to get out 102,500. So on this deal, when we've refinanced, we've left 22,000 of our money in the deal. So we haven't got all our money out. It's still a good deal because we've left 22,000 in. And we can see, for example, if we're operating this as a HMO, so house of multiple occupation, shared house, that's the income that we're going to get every year. Those are our costs. That's the management fee if it's under management. That's our net income before we pay the loan fees. And then when we've taken off the loan fees, we've got this amount of what we call cash flow. Cash flow is the net money that's in our pocket when we paid the lending fees and all the different fees, which means in reality, we've left in this deal 22,000. We're getting 8,800 in cash flow per year. So the return on investment on the money that we left in the deal is 40%, which obviously is, in this case, actually is very good. So these are but we need to make sure that we're taking into account all the different fees. And this is in comparison here. It says if we're operating it as an HMO, if we're operating it as a standard buy-to-let, in other words, if we were renting this out to an individual family, this is the income that we'll be getting every month. We have to pay insurance, rent guarantee insurance, maintenance. So we have to do some maintenance on the property. We have to, because sometimes deal sources will be say, this is the income you're going to get, but they're not saying these are the expenses. So if you're looking to buy a deal, consider everything and put everything in the calculator to understand what it's really going to make you. So in this case, if we're renting this house out to an individual family, we're going to be getting that much cash flow per year, 3,000, which is still 14% return on the money left in the deal, which is still good, much better than leaving it in the bank. But if we can rent out the house as individual rooms, we're going to get a lot more from it. And then to complete this example that I showed straight away is if we buy cash and refinance. If we don't have the 124,000 to buy cash, we can go down to this option here, which is using bridging finance for the purchase. So in this case, we can borrow 75% of the purchase price. We can borrow 100% of the cost of renovation. We've still got our arrangement fees. When we're borrowing to do a renovation, we have to pay for survey fees and QS's quantity surveyor. We have to pay for people to come, and the lender has to send someone to make sure that the renovation is being done correctly. So we've got these fees to pay. So we're not going to get so much money out. But when we do our calculation, we can borrow this much from the bank to do the deal so that we only need basically £40,000 to be able to get this house. So someone that's got 40,000, and as long as they've got sufficient an okay like credit rating to be able to go and get the lending on it, they can get into this deal. But if we're using bridging at the start, we obviously got these different finance costs. And when we finish the renovation, we're still going to be going back to, it's going to be a different bank and refinancing at the end. So we've got a second time the refinance fees. Yes, Costa?
Excuse me, Trevor, could you please quickly go through that? You said just like, to get into the deal, we just need a 40,000. So can you just quickly go through it again? Because I just wanted to make some notes on that.
Yeah, fine. Yeah. So what it means is, so if you go to the first one, we understand that we need 124,000 to be able to buy and
Yeah,
do the renovation. And
yeah,
that's if we're funding it with our own money. We're not going to the bank to borrow money.
yeah,
We're only going to the bank when we've finished the renovation because we want to
yeah,
get money back to be able to do our next deal.
yeah,
But if we don't have that 125,000, we can go to the bank at the very beginning. So before we buy the house, we can go to the bank and we can borrow a percentage of the purchase price. So the purchase price on this one, it was 105,000. So
hmm,
we can borrow 75% of that.
okay,
So the bank will lend us on this deal 78,000 to buy the property. And the
okay,
bank will also lend us the £9,500 that we need for the renovation.
okay,
The bank will lend that because the bank knows that that money is going to be adding value to the property.
yeah,
But when the bank lends that, the bank, before they actually give us the money, they need to make sure that that work has been done properly.
okay,
And so we have to pay the professionals who the bank is sending to check that the work has been done properly.
yeah,
So this is basically when we're using finance to fund a renovation, we
yeah,
have additional fees because we have to pay people that the bank is sending to check that basically the money has been spent correctly.
Correctly. Yeah. Yeah.
So every time we're using finance, we have to pay the bank also things like arrangement fees, different costs. So when we're using finance to buy the property, when we finish the renovation, we've got a property that's a higher value. So now we're going back to the bank to get new finance. And so we're also having to pay different fees on that. So what this is showing us is that if we've got £38,950 we can get into this deal.
Uh-huh.
When we've finished, we can refinance because the bridging finance at the beginning is short-term finance. It's for a maximum of 12 months. It's at quite high interest rates. It's going to be like at 1% per month because it's a higher risk for the bank. And when we've finished that work, we go back to the bank or generally a different bank, and there we're going to go onto a long-term loan. So
Okay.
when we finish the renovation work, we've got a property now that we can rent out, we can get money from it. It's a more secure deal for the bank, and the bank will say, now that everything's done, we'll lend against that property and we'll lend the money for 20 years or 30 years, for example. So
Okay.
there we're on to a standard mortgage product.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
So
Thank
in this case, the green thing here is the initial finance to be able to buy the property. So the investor is putting £40,000 into the deal. And just checking. And at the end, when we finish the work, is getting a new lending based on the value of 140,000. And at the end, will be based on the new lending, we'll be getting £12,000 back out of the deal. So in this case, there's still £26,000 of the money left in the deal. But obviously now we've got a property that is producing monthly income and cash flow for the investor. But the difference is the money left in is 26,000 when we're using finance both to buy and to refinance. Whereas if you got the money at the beginning, we were only leaving in 22,000. The difference actually is around £5,000. That difference is the cost of the bridging finance at the beginning. So if someone's got the money sitting there like 125,000, best to use that money, buy, renovate, and only go to the bank once to refinance. But if the investor doesn't have that money, but has 40,000, can still do a good deal on there, but the finance costs are going to be a bit higher. So that basically is an example of how we can, in a lot of detail, take into account all the ins and outs to understand if a deal is really a deal or just some headline figures. And when we get into the calculation, we understand it's not a good deal, or we might decide it is a good deal. Any questions on this one?
No, I clarified actually. So yeah, it was clear.
Yeah. Sure. So I was going to ask. So yeah, brilliant examples here. I know we had a chat about we had a similar um exercise that you gave us on our first week when we did the first week's training last year in December. I did some maths around it. So I mean, ultimately, based on these examples that you just shared with us, um, ideally, if you had that 120, 20 grand, I think it's probably best to probably splits that and allow yourself to go into different deals using bridging loans to to basically work on different deals rather than just basically doing a single deal, obviously with the interest rate much lower because you're going to the bank just
Yeah.
once. Yeah, so okay.
Yeah, because in
Okay.
reality, with this 124, it's basically 3 times the 40,000 that we need to get in if we're using bridging finance.
Yeah.
In practice, if I had 125,000, what I would probably recommend is to do buy two at once. So we've got like some margin, because then instead of borrowing at 75% loan to value, we can maybe borrow at 60% loan to value or get better interest rates. And if one of the renovations end up taking longer, or we find something that we need to spend some extra money because we discovered that there's some little structural problem that we need to spend a couple of thousand things, or we find that we've got to rewire the whole house, it's best keeping a bit of money in reserve. So it'd be more prudent to go like for two rather than stretch it to the limit and do three.
Okay. Okay, understood.
But at the end of the day, it's also a question of individual investor appetite. Because if, for example, someone's got the money, but they've also got some ongoing income from their job or their business, they'll say, "Look, I'm going to go for it because if in 2 months' time I realize that I need to find a couple of thousand because of something we haven't planned for," and they know that they've got that ongoing income from the job or their business, then that's fine. It's a question of comfort and appetite for risk. Or we can say, look, I've got money available on my credit cards. I'm just going to go for it because I want to get the momentum going and get the income. Okay, any other questions?
It's clear for me.
Okay, that's great. Well, we'll keep it short. Um, there's going to be the training next week as well. Next week it's rent to rent primarily. And we'll also be doing the little deal clinic, looking at a different deal each week. And sometimes people in the group might have a deal that they're looking at and they can put it forward, and we'll look at the figures together. All right, well, thank you for your time, and have a good evening.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
All
much,
right, yeah.
Trevor.
There we are. Bye.
I know.
Yeah. Cheers. Thank you. Bye.